The views and opinions expressed in the following paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here are Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
And welcome to the show. Welcome to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert, sitting here with Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Jeff, you're looking pretty good, all things considered.
That's right. We're deep in it, deep in the tax season. So.
Deep in the tax season, and there's a lot of things that I was asking you about off the air, and you said, Josh, do you mind if we wait until after tax season before we get to that? We've got a topic coming up later in the show about just a little bit touching on inheritance tax, and that could be an entire...
Oh, yeah.
It
could be a day.
Month.
Yes.
That could be a month's worth of shows, inheritance taxes, and how does that work? But we'll save the big portion of that until a future date after tax time is over. Because, man, I mean, we're almost through March now.
That's right.
April 15th, or what's the day this year?
April 15th.
It is.
Yes.
April 15th.
It's a Monday.
It's a Ooh, yay. Everybody loves Mondays. Tax day on a Monday, probably worst day of the year.
Yeah.
But
second worst.
if you do things correctly, if you have taken our advice over the last 3 years, if you have gone and seen Jeff and said, hey, my taxes were a mess last year, how do I change things so that my taxes this year, maybe I actually get some money back? If you've done everything correctly, tax time should be a breeze.
Exactly. We're trying to make it to where I don't have to have a giant box of Kleenex on my desk.
For clients.
People that come in and they go, what?
I mean, the box of Kleenex could be for you as well, because I'm sure you're there.
No, can't get cold.
Yeah. But, you just, probably about 7 p.m., you just start weeping. And then you get a sandwich and it's back to the grind.
That's right.
But if you do everything correctly, tax time should not be something that you're dreading every year.
Be a breeze, and I say a breeze from a standpoint you know where you're at, and it's funny because for me personally, it's a good feeling. Literally, just this morning, I've opened one, went through it, and that's one that we built a full blown plan for him. Just retired last year, so he's a full year into retirement now. We were within $200 of the projections, so that's
really
awesome.
Wow. Yeah. And that's so interesting because what's the quote of mice and men, best laid plans, something like that. We can make all the best plans in the world, but between now and my retirement, there's a lot of life happening.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on, a lot of moving parts too.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you project and you got a lot of moving parts on a tax return, it's hard to zero it in.
I mean, births, divorces, deaths.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
All kinds of crazy stuff.
All kinds of things can happen between now and 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Or in my case, probably 40 or 50 years from now.
50, maybe 52.
But to see that you got within $200 of your projections, and does that mean that every year, though, you are recalculating?
Yes. So that's what has to take place now. So they're a year into retirement. Now what we need to do is sit back down with them one more time, figure out where we're going to get their money from, how what their monthly income looks like, where it's coming from, and what the tax consequences are.
Is this kind of how it works? You sit down and you say, hey, what happened over the last year?
Yeah.
And I tell you, and you say, okay, well, our target is still the same.
Yes. But
to get there, based on what happened last year, we need to make a tweak here, and there.
Yes.
Okay. And that's how it works.
Or rotate where you're getting your cash from,
right?
From an income standpoint, and go from there. And
hey,
then
I got divorced. I got married. We had a kid. Oh, okay. So those are probably big changes.
Those are huge.
Even if not much happens, you still might need to tweak.
Or the other thing that we've seen is, people that are expecting, that will, in 2024, we're doing their 23 tax return, and they go, oh, yeah, by the way, we're expecting this year. So now you can adjust their tax withholding currently because you know that you'll have another child coming into the play.
Right.
So that's
and
all part of it.
Theoretically, right? Isn't this how it's supposed to work? The older we get, the more we work, the higher our income gets. I get a pay raise.
Yes.
I get, this. I get that. And the more money I make, my options start to open up a little bit more. My house payment didn't necessarily go up.
Exactly.
Taxes did a
Yeah,
little bit.
your real estate taxes did, yeah. Or your insurance.
But now I might have a little bit more money to actually play with.
Yes.
Which means, Jeff, what do I max out my 401k?
Exactly.
Do I max out my Roth? Now that I've maxed those out, where do I put it?
Exactly. What's your next step? I mean, each person is different. In some cases, again, it goes back to that old, I'd say pay yourself first, which what I mean by that is if you owe tax, when we back in to figure out, yes, you could just write a check to the IRS or the state and make it go away and boom, your tax is done, but it's going to come back next year and it might come back even more next year. So the concept is go in, figure out what's at take, maybe a combination of a 401k, higher 401k contributions. You're going to write the check anyway, so have it taken from your 401k. You're paying yourself first, an HSA, maybe an IRA, depending upon where you're at.
Many things to do.
There's tons of options, exactly.
And if you're listening right now and you say, I don't have a 401k, I don't have an HSA, I don't have an FSA, I don't have this, I don't have that, there are so many things that Jeff can clue you in on that you can just, and again, I'll use this example. We did an FSA for my son's school, and we're keeping, I like to say save, but the show's called Keep What's Yours. We're keeping $1,200 in our pockets. That's real.
That's it.
That's real money.
It's real dollars.
And this summer, that's Disney's money.
Yeah.
Because we're going to use it to go to Disneyland. So if you're not doing this stuff, and it's maybe it's $50 here, maybe it's $100
exactly.
there, but the one we're doing is $1,200.
Yeah, it all adds up at the end of the year.
I pull somebody over on the side of the street and say, man on the street, shove a microphone in their face, say, hey, would you rather have $1,200 more this year than you did last year? And they would say yes.
They better.
So it's like, well, what are you doing tax-wise? And then their eyes glaze over.
Yeah, and they go, what?
Well, that's why you get somebody who knows how to do this stuff. That's Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Here's the number just really quickly, 636-394-5524. Here's the website, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. All this to say, one more time, that tax season should not be something that you're worried about. Me, personally, I'm excited because it gives me a chance to sit down with you and, rub my hands together and say, whoa, Jeff, what am I missing out on this year?
That's right.
What next? More can I do? Because now that I know that, I've got a future ahead of me.
Yeah.
I've got retirement with somewhere in the vision way down the road. But how can I make that retirement maybe come earlier?
Yeah.
Or how can I make it a bit more pleasant and plush?
Yes.
I'm like salivating at the fact. I'm treating this like a game now.
You have to.
And it's like, what more can I do to help myself later down the road? And as long as I can still put food on the table and pay my mortgage,
exactly,
and go out to Disney every other year or something, or every couple of years. Disney's real expensive.
Super expensive.
Yeah. Good thing my wife got a bonus. As long as I'm able to still do that stuff, I want to be able to sock as much away in the most tax-efficient way possible.
Yes.
And that's what you help me with. So tax season should be an opportunity rather than looking at it and say, ugh, tax season again.
No.
If that's how you feel, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly.
So, Jeff, you had somebody in your office that you were telling me, and we won't give out names, but they were crying.
Yes,
because they had done what the previous year?
They pulled some money, were places that they shouldn't have, and they kind of forgot about it. I don't think anybody coached them as to, hey, be worried about this, but it literally puts them through the stratosphere in tax brackets. So they went from a modest income last year to way out there this year. Their numbers are just like almost in tears trying to explain this to them.
Yeah.
And again,
were these penalties? Were these just taxes?
If you're under 59.5 and you go pull money from an IRA,
you're going to get penalized.
You pay federal tax, state tax, and you pay a 10% penalty. The 10% penalty isn't calced until you do the tax return, and then it's plopped on there. So you take $150,000 from an IRA. It's, we joke about that as like, oh, hey, we're going to buy a boat, we're going to cash, $150 in. That literally takes and just throws you so far up there in the stratosphere, it's not even funny.
If I come into some money, whether it's maybe some sort of inheritance of an IRA or a lottery win, or I go to the boat and, a hot hand of dice, is there a way to say, hey, I just came into, $20,000.
Yes.
I want to pay the tax on it now.
Yes.
Or is it always pushed off? Because if I come into $20,000, I'm going to spend it.
Well, so here's
pay off
the
my credit cards and this and that, and then I'm going to get a tax bill the next April.
Exactly. To go, hey,
and I don't have any money left to pay my taxes on that.
So typically, if it's early in the year, like around now, and let's say you're lucky at the boat, you know what I mean, and you hit and you make some money. The concept is yes, you will pay a little bit of tax there before they give you cash or cut you a check, depending upon how big it is. But you still are going to have a liability at the end of the year. So if we're aware of it, or your preparer is aware of it, literally what takes place is they will do estimated payments or figure a tax strategy out for you going forward to accommodate those winnings. And then that way, when you get to the end of the year, you still have a little bit of money in your pocket. Your taxes hypothetically have been paid, and you're good to go. Versus waiting, and one of the biggest issues we see is people are panic-stricken when they see this. The underpayment penalty for underpaying or paying your taxes is 8%. So it used to be based upon a 1.5, 2.5 as rates came up a little bit. IRS really didn't adjust the number.
And you said people would say, look, I can make 5% of my money, and they're only going to ding me 1 or 2%.
2%, 2.5.
I'm not going to pay my taxes because I'm going to use this cash to make money.
You use it to make money, and at the end of the year, then you pay your tax. And yes, you pay a tax on top of a tax, if you want to call it that. But it wasn't anything to go, ooh, that's a lot of
3%.
Money. Exactly.
Right.
Today, you won't be able to pull that off because they've figured that angle out.
Yeah.
And they've kind of increased it with the Fed funds rate going up and interest going up. Now it's 8%. So literally it is a number that is brain-boggling if you owe the IRS money. And it's a chunk of change. So if you owe them thousands, it's hundreds.
Right.
So,
and then just to say that now is a great opportunity. What's done is done for the most part of 2023.
Yeah, you can't fix it. You can't make it go away. You could play with it a little bit, with a couple options. But the deeper we go into tax season, the less you'll be able to do.
And just remember, everything that you do is probably going to kick off some sort of taxable event.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you want to take money out of your IRA early or take money over here or convert this or convert that, you've got to talk to, and this is why Jeff's so good at being a tax strategist and a wealth advisor at the same time. One-stop shopping. You say, hey, Jeff, I want to pull money from my, my brokerage account. And Jeff will tell you right then and there what tax implications will be for that.
We do the calcs automatically, and before the check's even sent, we have the tax withheld.
So technically speaking, if my tax strategist and my wealth advisor are two separate people, I might be talking to my wealth advisor, pulling money out, and they never tell me
exactly
the tax hit I'm going to get the next year.
Until you do your taxes.
But you will tell me, well, that's fine and dandy, but this is your tax hit. Do you still want to do this?
Yes.
And
that's the question.
That's the best part about Jeff being both a tax strategist and wealth advisor. Well, the second best. The first best is I only have to make one trip.
Exactly.
And there's a Taco Bell at the end of the street.
That's right.
So the best part about this time of year is the fact that you can start over.
Yeah.
You can get a redo. What's done is done from last year.
Yeah.
2024, maybe get a good foot off. And, heck, it's not even April yet, so you can get 9 months of tax benefits, tax savings, tax keepings if you make some adjustments now. And next year, you'll be happy.
You'll be a
to
lot happier.
And to see Jeff when you're doing your taxes, because you say, "Oh boy, how much am I getting back?" Rather than, "Oh no, how much?"
Yeah, how much are I gonna write that check for?
All right, before we go to break, March Madness is here.
Yes.
Everybody's got their brackets, whether they're legal or illegal.
Exactly.
First and foremost, if I make money off of a bracket, do I have to claim that on my taxes?
The words of wisdom, you should.
You should. So what happens, though, with I just read a story over in Ethiopia. The bank accidentally had a glitch, and say I had $100 in my ATM. I could take out as much as I wanted, and that was a glitch, and people were just running to ATMs taking money out. They say, hey, give it back, and we won't punish anybody.
Yeah.
But if I have ill-gotten gains, or if I have money that I won from a basketball tournament that was run kind of under the table.
Yeah.
And I claim that stuff on my taxes because you should.
You should.
Are they going to say, oh, okay, well, thanks for claiming that on your taxes. But where'd you get this?
No. They won't really question. It's other income. They won't question it. People do it all the time. And you're going to pay some little bit of tax on it. Most people are like, oh, don't ever report it. Don't even say anything. But again, if you make good money, no different than the boats. They're not going to ask you where you got it from. Now, let's say that you don't report it. And the person that you were getting those ill-gotten gains from under the table gets audited and they get popped.
Oh, no.
Then guess what? Your name shows up on the list, because that's the first thing the IRS is going to say is, all right, who'd you pay out all this money to? And then your name comes up on the list, and they go look at your tax return. That's when they would question, hey, where's that money at? So that's the starts of a audit is the easiest way to explain it.
Well, if you're better than me at bracket picking,
I don't have to worry about it because I lose all the time.
Yeah, I never win. And you win some money, go talk to Jeff and say, how do we navigate this process?
Yes.
636-394-5524. I mean, the last thing you want to do is get audited.
No.
And get charged with tax fraud.
Yes.
636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. When we come back, what's in the news? What's going on with the IRS? What's going on with AI? That sounds kind of weird. AI has moved into our taxes?
Yes.
Yeah, it sure has. And has the Biden administration shown their hand a little bit?
Just barely, to kind of get you looking at it going,
Are they saying, hey, re-elect us, and these might be some of our tax proposals that we'll put in place? So we'll talk about that as well. It is Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com, 636-394-5524.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the show, back to Keep What's Yours. All right, we did the kind of buffer segment to say, hey, tax time is an opportunity, not a death sentence.
Exactly.
So if you had a bad tax year this year, talk to Jeff, and he can make sure that you fix your withholdings.
Yes.
You fix this. You fix that. Don't do this. Don't take money out of your IRA early.
No.
Unless you know all of the penalties that are involved. And let's set ourselves up to have a good tax year next year. You have to do. If you had a bad tax year this year, Jeff should be your first phone call.
That's right.
To say,
don't repeat it.
I don't ever want to go through this again. 636-394-5524. Now, what's going on in the news? Because earlier this week, the Fed said that we're not raising the rates. They didn't say that.
No,
they just said we're
neutral.
Yeah.
So,
call us next month.
So what everybody is waiting for is this pause. So either the Fed comes out.
And there's a difference from them saying we're not raising it to
a pause, which means we're not doing anything going forward for the next 6 months, 9 months, a year. And they decrease rates. And again, it's still a little too soon for decreasing rates. They kind of set the stage, if you want to call it that, and maybe premature. Last year, towards the end of last year, they came out and said, hey, we may drop rates 3 times next year in 24. and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, that's political," blah blah blah. It's kind of good because I think they were precursing it so that it didn't seem like there was a full political move. So again, now we're sitting in 2024. We're in March. They just last Thursday, whatever it was, Wednesday, announced that they were just going to go neutral. They're not doing anything. But what they are repeating is it's going to be higher for longer, which means rates are going to stay a little higher for a longer period of time to combat inflation. And they left the door open for the possibility, June, July, August, that they would maybe start to decrease rates if they see the right data.
So Vegas odds, being what everybody's looking at Vegas odds because they're looking at the basketball tournament.
As of last Wednesday afternoon.
Is there really if I go to the sports book, can I go?
I'm sure you could probably find it.
All right, what basketball game? I go, no.
Yeah.
Take me to the tech sector.
That's
I want to bet on if the Fed raises interest rates.
Yes,
70%.
As we said, of last Wednesday at noon, it's 70%. The odds are north of 70% that they will decrease rates. Cut the rates by sometime later this year. Not now, not in the near future.
Hey, I like those odds.
They're pretty good. But again, Fed is data dependent. So if CPI numbers come out, Consumer Price Index, and it continues to increase, that means inflation is still out there. And again, the Fed's target is 2 to 2.5%. Excuse me. But that's what they keep coming back to, saying it's going to take us a little bit longer to get there. So,
well, let me ask you this. There are people that hang on every word the Fed says.
Yes.
Because as soon as they stop talking, they're rushing and,
yes,
throwing their hands up again. Why do those people, by the way, on Wall Street wear those smocks? I never understood. They wear these
they used to hold tickets,
blue jackets.
So when they were doing their bids and offers, basically, in auction style, they could pull all that stuff out of their little.
It's not really how it works
little
anymore.
Pockets. It doesn't work that way anymore at all.
But I'm looking at the Dow Jones, and from earlier in the week until the end of the week, it went up 1,000 points. Is this based on what the Fed said?
Yes.
Just point blank, Fed said this, and that's why that happened.
They know that remember, there's an old adage that says you can't fight the Fed. What it means, not that you're going to go fight, Wall Street or something crazy like that. It's that when the Fed is raising interest rates, it's really difficult to be an investor. Really difficult because.
But they didn't lower them. They didn't do anything.
But they didn't do anything. So now and then the dissertation is what I call it that they put out afterwards. Basically, goes through this. If you read the dissertation, you probably fall asleep before you were done reading it. It's pretty boring. But basically what it's saying is the market doesn't have to worry about the Fed for the next couple of months. They probably won't do anything.
Let's start trading again.
Exactly.
Okay.
And boom, off to the races. So
I guess that makes sense.
It sounds goofy, but it's the fact that if the Fed comes out and says we are pausing, which means we're pausing for the next year, 2 years, means they will not increase or decrease rates. They're going to let it run at its own accord. The market's going to go crazy.
I'm looking at the ticker from just 1 week, Monday through Friday, and it, boom, and that way I could trace this right back to the Fed's announcement.
To the announcement when they said they're pausing.
How about that?
So that's what everybody is waiting for. Now, if we see, which may be funny, and again, you can't predict the market, but it may be funny as if they decrease rates, the market may go, wait a minute.
Right.
But all it means is that the Fed steps out of the way for a little bit and lets the economy do its thing. So,
all right. H&R Block had offered. They said, hey, you could file your tax returns for free on our website, and then when you went to the website, it was almost impossible to find.
It was
that page.
Yeah. So now H&R Block is suing the Federal Trade Commission.
Well, wait a minute. So, they sued H&R Block.
Yes. Now they're saying that they're trying to seek an order that could upend the accusation that they
countersuing
misleading information. So we'll wait to see. But that's gutsy, if you want to call that, to go after as a corporation to go sue the FTC and say overreach of their powers.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how this. And remember, most people don't realize H&R Block is a Kansas City-based company. So,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they're, I say local if you want to look at it on a national scale.
Did you ever, in your experience, go, because it wasn't just them, it was other people too, but did you go to these websites to try to find you personally?
No, I never personally did myself.
But all this stuff that we've
they're
read.
saying that you couldn't find it if you had to. They were buried so deep you'd have to click through 20 different things to get there.
And I'd get to the end and they would say, hey, pay us $30. And I'd say, look, I can't find the page. It's $30. I'm already done. Here's my money.
And I mean, honestly, it was kind of misleading because they said, hey, file free. They just kind of forgot the little disclaimer that you're going to have to pay for your state filing. So the software was free, the federal was free, but
state wasn't.
The state wasn't. So that's where they got you, because you'd have your return all said and done. And then, poof, when you go to e-file, you already e-filed your federal, and then you got to go, what do you do with the state?
Well, look, I didn't even bring my wallet with me. You said it was
free. Pay them $30, yeah.
Right. Other news that's come down years ago as part of the either the infrastructure package or the inflation reduction package, which had nothing to do with inflation, $80 billion goes to the IRS.
Yes.
Then they started clawing that money back. I think $20 billion was clawed back.
Debt ceiling debate in
January.
Right.
The Republicans said, well, we'll agree, but give us $20 billion.
We're going to steal it from over here.
And then a Ukraine bill to give funding to them. They took another.
Ukraine, Israel, and something else tied in there.
Now they're taking another $20 billion back. So all of a sudden, the $80 billion that the IRS was going to use towards updating their systems, actually getting their lunchroom back because they were going to try to go as paperless as possible.
That is a joke in our business, but
yeah, right. Paperless IRS, good luck. Hiring people to go out and find tax dodges.
Yes,
all that money that they thought $80 billion is now cut in half.
Yeah, chopped in half.
$40 billion.
So now,
as of now, if not less.
Yes. Well, and
in the future,
who knows what's down the pike that they start messing with. So the IRS is struggling to update their plan for the additional funds.
I mean, you tell me, hey, I'll give you $80 billion. You tell me, what are you going to do if all of a sudden someone takes half of that back?
I don't think that was built in their original plan or budget. I think now that they're going, maybe we need to address that. So basically, they funded them. Now they're defunding them.
And why are they picking on the IRS? Like, look, okay, I get it. Nobody likes the IRS, but when it comes down to it, if they hunt down all these tax cheats, they'll be bringing in more revenue in people actually paying their fair share.
Exactly.
Than the $80 billion that they were given.
Yeah, and I think earlier this year, the first initiative that the IRS set out on, they raised an additional $550 million. So again, it doesn't have the big, billion behind it, but they've got $550 from, I'll call it tax cheats, people that either weren't filing, weren't paying the right amount, whatever the case may be. So they've recouped that. They kind of put that out there as, hey, look what we did on our first go-round. It's fell on deaf ears.
And I don't want to call anybody out, hey, you hear all the time on the radio, and hey, why are they picking on me? And my answer, I have no sympathy, because you didn't pay your taxes.
Exactly.
I did.
In some cases, it's
you didn't.
Just that.
I don't have sympathy when the IRS comes after you. You should have paid. Should have called Jeff Zufall.
Exactly.
And here, I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you don't like paying taxes, tough cookies, okay? Yeah. But if you want to pay as little tax as possible, you need a Jeff Zufall to tell you all of the avenues legally inside the tax code that you could be taking advantage of that you aren't.
That you don't, and you reduce your taxable income legally, and you don't have to worry about it.
So look, swallow it down. Yeah. You have to pay something in taxes.
Yeah.
But hire Jeff, and your tax bill will be as small as possible. And then we can both have a beer together because we both paid our taxes.
Exactly.
And you're not heading to the slammer.
Exactly.
Because you didn't pay yours.
Yep.
So I don't have any sympathy for the people that say, the IRS is coming after me. Well, why? They're not coming after me.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and again, in some cases, you say, hey, that's mean because, and we really haven't seen it lately, but they're back. Believe me, they're back. We've seen our first couple of audit notices came out in the last 30 days or so. letters that are being addressed, quizzing people on, hey, you took this deduction, prove it. Whereas 19, 20, 21, you really didn't see anything from the IRS. They were dormant.
And why is that?
COVID, for starters. They sent everybody to work
Sure.
from home, and the IRS that's kind of difficult. I don't know how they really accomplished that, to be honest with you. I don't think they did.
Because all the papers are at
Exactly,
the office.
that's what I mean. And half the servers they can't get into because it's an antiquated, computer system. That's what the $80 billion was for. So, as a maybe a pundit for it to say, hey, if they could increase their computer systems, they would be a little bit more efficient, effective. But again, that's the big political game being played as we sit. But
Sure.
today, they're alive. They're back. The collections department's turned back on. So there's people getting notices saying, you owe us money. You owe us money from 2019 because we couldn't get to it.
Right. And I'd like to see the little guy win, and I'd like to see the little guy get away with something over the big bad government. But if I got to pay my taxes,
Then everybody else should too.
Everybody else has to too. Okay, so you're not going to get a sympathy vote from me.
Yeah.
The IRS is going to start using AI to help detect tax fraud. Now, AI,
Yes.
I mean, it's like all of a sudden someone said AI 2 months ago.
And it goes poof, all of a sudden it's
And
the biggest thing out
It's
there.
everywhere. So it's like normally there's a ramp up to these things. Like it's like Elon Musk didn't just say electric cars and then poof.
Hey, I saw my first truck. When was it?
The Cybertruck?
Cybertruck. A neighbor had one sitting in his driveway.
Is it his?
I'm
Or
assuming
was someone
so.
visiting him?
I don't know.
You should go over and look
I almost
at it.
stopped when I drove by, and I thought, no, that's too weird. I don't know the guy, so walk
Look,
up and go, hey, I live way over there. But
I'll tell you this. Half the reason he bought it is because he wants people to stop
it was
him.
sitting out front.
Yeah, stop. If he didn't want the attention, he would have put it in the
It would have
garage.
been in the garage, hidden, tucked around the corner. But
okay.
funky looking, very funky looking vehicle.
Oh, well, I've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it in real life.
It made you look and you go, what is that? And then you go, oh my God, that's a truck.
Yeah.
So,
But there was a ramp up period
Yes.
between him coming up with this idea and we actually see the Cybertruck itself took like 4 or 5 years
to get to production and get it actually out.
But
So,
with this AI, it's like someone said AI and then boom, now it's here.
I think it's been hiding in the wings for a long time. We just haven't paid attention to it, I guess. And the couple of the companies out there, basically like NVIDIA, AMD, those are the chip manufacturers, and these guys, their stock's gone berserk. It's not a promo for any of those companies. It's just the companies that you've never heard of. AMD basically used to build processors for computers. Now all of a sudden they're this chip manufacturer. NVIDIA came out of nowhere. It was a startup 2 years ago. And if you go look at the share price on the stock, it's up thousands of a percent.
Well, I mean, we're coming off the pandemic where chips were in high demand. There was cars sitting on lots that
'cause they
GM
couldn't run.
sell
Yeah.
because they didn't have the proper chips. They were waiting.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, out in the Arizona desert, they're fast tracking these chip factories because we don't want to be dependent on Taiwan.
Yeah. Because that was, what was it? I think it was Taiwan. Somebody was saying that if North Korea ever came into South Korea, I think it was Seoul, South Korea, makes and basically attacked that city, that nobody would get a TV or a monitor for their computer because that's where they're all made, one city.
And all the chips.
Yeah.
So we're starting to make them here in the U.S., which is a good idea. Brings
Very
some
good.
fun manufacturing back to our shores. But when it comes to AI, it needs these chips to run. And
But
now everybody and their brother, including the IRS.
IRS is using it. And so what they're saying is they're actually, this is the quote, basically, and it talks about, hey, including upgrades to online tools and services and the use of artificial intelligence to detect tax evasion. And you
Now,
go,
how?
Well,
Like,
I guess what it's going to do,
scan all of our returns?
a bot's going to scan the returns and say, hey, what are the odds on you with your economic, the stuff that is used on the backside, not just going, hey, you're, the flower shop and the average flower shop has these items on their balance sheet. They take these average deductions. And if you're out of the realm, yeah, that could be a flag. This is taking it saying, hey, it knows who you are. It knows what you do. And it says, how is this possible that you make more than your neighbor? That type of a weird. It's
AI
scary.
can
it's
instantly scan your entire life
in a flash of a second. And
whereas
say,
it would take someone to really pore over this
it'd
and go
take
through your bank
an auditor
records.
months,
Right.
probably weeks of sitting at a table going through this stuff. AI can do it in about 10 seconds.
And that,
Probably faster than that.
right. This is the future of everything, but I'm scared of AI, frankly.
It scares me, but the stuff that we've played with, you go, ooh, that's cool.
Right. Well, time saver is one thing.
Yeah.
But is this going to maybe send me into an audit when I maybe didn't need to?
It very well could. Again, manpower of the IRS is the key, though. So AI could find, 50,000 tax returns. It stacks up on the table and says, hey, but you need the manpower then to go back and validate it. Right. So if they ever said, hey, AI is going to audit you, that'd scare about 90% of America.
This doesn't look correct. And then I'm like, well, now I got to pull all this paperwork out because it is correct.
Yeah.
So we'll and maybe AI is even just smarter than that.
And people are saying is if you can figure out how to use it to your advantage, not meanly, but use it to your advantage, it'll make you money and it won't scare you as much as what you think it is. Versus when you just dabble into it a little bit and say, "Ooh, that's scary," on what it can do or can dig up for you is amazing.
Yeah, and then before we go to commercial break, we are running out of time in the show. Just to remind everybody, hey, it's tax season, and if you paid too much last year and you don't want to pay as much, you need somebody like Jeff Zufall on your side. I'll give the number out in just a second. But do you guys have to go to like a conference or something when AI comes out?
Well, AI, all kinds of weird stuff.
The new tax code changes.
Definitely new tax code. This year was easy because it was kind of, I say, status quo to a degree. Nothing big was out there on the rosters. Some retirement changes, but we get that from broker dealers. But yeah, typically each year you do a 2-day. I'll call it a seminar. A lot of them used to be in person. You'd sit for 8 hours for 2 days, and they would say, here's the changes in the tax law, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you'd struggle to keep awake for 8 hours. They've gone to a lot of online stuff. They've chopped it up into where it's like over a couple of weeks span, 4 hours here, 3 hours there. But yes, every time that there's an update to the best interest scenario where you got to report if you have a pass-through, have to report the FinCEN. There's been probably 6 hours in here's how you do it, here's what you look for, here's what you don't look for. So each time that they do this, so again, in 25, if they revamp tax law, it'll be I don't want to say wipe this slate clean, but it will be a complete revamp of what everybody's accustomed to. Well,
let's talk about that in our final segment of the day. Biden tax proposals, did they tip their hand? Did they say,
they're
re-elect us, and this might be tax law in the future?
Kind of laid it out, and what the scary part that we were like, ooh, we don't like.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a sec.
But they're being somewhat vague as not to just really make a lot of people
very
mad.
Vague.
636-394-5524. That's the phone number for Jeff Zufall. Capital Advisory Group, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. If you paid too much in taxes last year, or you hear us talking and you say, look, there's much more I can be doing inside my personal taxes so that maybe you can keep more of what's yours. Hey, that's what the show is called. That's what the book is called that Jeff wrote. And that's the lifestyle we want you to live. Keep more of your money in your pocket and less going out to the IRS. The only way to do that, give Jeff a call. 636-394-5524.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the show, back to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. One more segment left, just a really quick one. I want to bring this up because I think it's funny, and I think it really exemplifies the fact that what we think we know when it comes to taxes, retirement, all that stuff, what we think we know, we have no idea. You had somebody call you, and they were under the impression that they were going to have to start their RMD, required minimum distribution, because they just turned 70.
Yes. So, long story short, and it's not just one, it's a few phone calls on that one going, oh, man, I got to start that this year, and, blah, when do I take it? And then when I look up and say, hey, you just turned 70, you don't have to take it till you're 73. This is how confusing some of these tax laws become. The old school rule was the year in which you turned 70 and a half. Then maybe 3 years ago, they changed it to age 72, gave us a big whopping year and a half.
It really wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Okay, so let's give them some credit for that.
Most definitely. So then it was 72 for maybe 6 months or 8 months. Now it's age 73. So if you have not started any of your RMDs yet due to your age.
And pushing back the RMD is a good thing for us.
Yes.
Because it's required. I can take it out whenever I want, but when the government comes in and says I have to.
When you're forced to, that's the longer you can push it, the better.
Yes.
And part of the Inflation Reduction Act, basically, I think that if you are under the age of 75 by don't quote me on the year, 2026, 2028, you don't have to take your RMD until you're 75. And that's for younger generations down the road. So less is more in this situation, which means if you have to take money out of your 401 or your IRAs, 401ks, and you don't need it, which is typically what takes place, you just pay a tax. That's it. So it's a way the IRS says, hey, this stuff's been sitting there, tax deferred, we want our money.
Yeah.
So,
but to be fair to this gentleman or this woman that, and you've gotten several calls over this, they just turned 70 this year. 4 or 5 years ago, they were turning 65, 66.
Yeah.
So they probably boned up on all of this information.
That's my target in the future is 70. I got to start taking it.
They just haven't kept up with the new laws and the rules.
Oh, yeah. There's been a lot of twists and turns.
When you told them it was 73 now, did they
He was like, thank you.
reach through the phone and give you a kiss on the lips?
No, just said thank you.
Oh.
So I don't have to worry about it.
I don't have to worry about it now.
Don't have to worry about it, and I'll worry about it in 3 years.
So what you might have picked up 5 years ago
is not necessarily true today.
Be completely different.
Yes.
And what was it, the Secure Act with the stretch IRAs?
Yes.
If you're thinking you're doing a stretch IRA right now, well, you got another thing coming.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So things do change,
yes.
and you got to be on top of it. So it's good to have a Jeff Zufall in your corner. But the Biden administration, they have kind of thrown out these tax proposals that they know are not going to get passed this year.
Yeah, they're literally saying that all the stuff that he's put out so far, they are dead on arrival.
Not going to happen.
In an election year, there's no way they're going to get touched.
Sure.
Knowing that Trump's tax cuts all expire next year, 2025, and that it's a complete revamp in 25 of the tax law. So the one big one, though, that it's kind of like going, and basically what he wants to do is end the effects of what's called a step-up in basis, but they keep referencing far wealthy individuals. So the question that we have is, what do they deem as wealthy individuals? We don't have a definition for that. So is it an income threshold, an asset threshold? We don't know. But what this means is if you own a house today and you pass away, as long as it's titled correctly and set up, your beneficiaries will inherit that value of that house on a step-up in basis of your death. They don't pay any tax. Whereas today, if you're single and you sell your primary residence, you have a $250,000 exclusion on a gain. Anything in excess of that, you pay a capital gains. And if you're married filing jointly, it's $500,000. So, again, when you pass, this is non-spouse, but to your kids, if you're going to leave a piece of land, your lake house, to your kids, technically the way the rule states today, as long as titled correctly, date of death, they inherit it. Boom, done. No taxes.
So the one that always helps me illustrate this one is the little old lady that bought the house in Ladue 50 years ago for $50,000.
Yes.
Now it's worth $1 million.
Exactly.
If she were to sell it, she would be facing capital gain. Like, she sold it today, she would face capital gains on
$700,000, because you $50,000 basis what you bought it for.
Mm-hmm.
She gets a single being $250,000 exclusion, so that's $300,000 is her basis that she doesn't pay tax, but she does pay tax on $700,000.
If she passes away and leaves it to her son, and he takes control of it, does that fact that it was purchased 50 years ago for $50,000?
It doesn't matter because on the date of her death, the house is valued at that $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So poof, nobody pays tax.
So he gets to inherit the $1 million house without incurring the insane capital gain.
Yes.
And I mean, look, it's a house that who knew that Ladue was going to be
worth that?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But that step up in basis, that's what that's called.
Yeah.
They're kind of tipping their hand to say we might want to do away with this for wealthy
individuals.
Well, what the heck does that mean?
They don't give
is
it.
That
they
people
don't give
that
a definition.
Is that Jeff Bezos wealthy, or is that people that make $1 million wealthy?
Don't know.
Okay.
So,
all right.
The good news, though, again, it goes the second one that's the easy. There's a bunch of weird ones which it take us a day to explain these. But he's also calling for doubling of the capital gains tax for upper income individuals. And what that means is if your income exceeds $1 million, today you would pay. So the capital gains rates today are 15 or 20%. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the normal person pays 15%. If your income is over, or your gain and your income total is 420, I think, or 480, you pay 20% capital gains. He's talking doubling it to 40% if you make over $1 million.
I mean, $1 million isn't what it used to be.
It's not.
Yeah,
so
it's not that high of a number.
That's what the scary part is like they reference for the step up in basis by wealthy individuals. They are basically saying the $1 million income is the upper income. So is that wealthy?
Right.
No, you're not starving by no means.
What's the definition of wealthy? What do you mean by is?
Yeah, exactly.
That is out there, and maybe another conversation for another time.
Yes, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff they've tossed out there. But it all has these weird caveats, and again, it's just pure
purposely left vague, though.
Vague, very vague.
Yeah. Okay.
And we haven't seen anything on Trump's side as to. I mean, we're running under his tax laws as we sit today. So,
would they just keep them rolling?
Yeah, that's a question, and he really hasn't said a word. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist, Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. There is a bonus, a benefit to having your tax strategist also be your wealth advisor, and that is when you want to go to make a financial move, Jeff can tell you immediately what your tax hit is going to be. And then you can say, well, is it worth it? Or maybe that's not worth it. I'll try something else. 636-394-5524. Oh, and by the way, he will take care of your taxes for you, filing them with the government. And the biggest, best, most beautiful part of it is if there's something out there in the tax code that can benefit you to make you pay less in taxes, he'll find it for you. 636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. Jeff Zufall, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed in the preceding paid program are those of the host, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of this station, its management, or owners.